So here's a trailer for Sound of Freedom.
I don't think I can do this job, Tim. As soon as I lay down, all they see are those kids' faces. How long you been doing this? 12 years. How do you do it?
It is the fastest growing international crime network that the world has ever seen. It has already passed the illegal arms trade, and soon it's going to pass the drug trade.
Señor Timoteo, tú rescatas niños, ¿verdad? Quizá puedas ayudarme a encontrar a mi hermana.
Imagine walking into a room right now, seeing an empty bed. What will we do?
Shivering stars drift around in the sky.
We're Homeland Security. You know we can't go off rescuing kids in Colombia.
I like all
This job tears you to pieces. This is my one chance to put those pieces back together.
I would say
We're talking about extracting an 11-year-old girl from an army of rebels.
Not just her. I'm talking about rescuing hundreds of kids.
She could be a block down the road, or she could be in Moscow, Bangkok, LA.
Over 2 million children a year are being sucked into the deepest recesses of hell. If we do nothing, someday it's gonna reach the likes of you. What if this was your daughter?
wherever I go, I find my way home.
If you would like to help us expose the horrible reality of human trafficking by bringing this true powerful story to the big screen, express interest now at angel.com/freedom.
So, that's the trailer. Even the trailer, I mean, right, it gets your emotions going. So here's the thing. I leaned over to my buddy during the film, and I said the musical selection was phenomenal. They masterfully worked with the sound. The movie is, generally speaking, slower. It's slower in pace. There's maybe not as much action, but there's a bunch of dialogue, even though I don't think the main character has much dialogue, but there's a lot of dialogue, conversations, but they fill in that lots of conversations and then the in-betweens with really, really powerful music. I mean, music that just gives you goosebumps and gets your emotions going. And so that's the first thing that for me was really hit me. Now, as a dad of 3 little kids, it's very, very difficult sitting there and watching a movie where all the stuff that is happening in the movie to these kids are the ages of my children, right? So all of my children are within that age range of between 5 and 11, right? My kids are 5, 7, and 9. And so it breaks you in a really, really good way to stuff that you don't really consider on a daily basis. And I'm not saying like in regards to relation with your family and stuff like that, just like what's going on, stuff we don't think about in regards to the outside world, or that is that country's problem or something like that. Even though there's a lot of stats given in the movie that are actual stats in regards to how the United States is the largest consumer of trafficking. So we're consumeristic in many ways, and that's one of them. And it's really the underbelly of our towns, and it's the underbelly of our country. And then there's stuff happening behind the scenes, which is a good thing. There's stuff happening behind the scenes of individuals fighting these things and then rescuing these kids. So you're going to cry. You will shed some tears. If you don't shed tears, especially if you're a parent and you don't shed tears when you watch this movie, I don't know. You're not very in tune with your emotions, is what I would say. Because it is very easy to see these kids and immediately think your kids. It's very, very easy to do that. And that's what happened with me as I watched the film. So great audio track, beautiful music. I think the storytelling was done really, really well. Okay, now it's a bunch of stories from a person's actual life that they brought together into one story. So it's a number of different things that they brought together really well. It shows you that I think in conversation with my friends, the reaction generally is, how can adults do something like this, right? And I would say, first and foremost, as a Christian, I would look at this and say, this is where human sin and depravity would lead to. And people are motivated for various things. In regards to the movie, they do a really good job, I think, of presenting the bad guys. They present the bad guys in a sense of, some of them are motivated by their depravities and perversions, right? So in the beginning of the movie, they deal with an actual pedo, which is an actual case that Tim worked on, and then discover kind of his catalog. He's written a book about it, how it should be normalized, and he's cataloged all, like, just many different videos and X, Y, and Z in his house. They present that guy, and then like you get this presentation of people that are largely motivated for financial gain. A lot of people where they're greedy, they're doing it for the money. And then you get this mix of it where an individual is doing it for the money, but is also doing it because he's like that. And so I think when we think about these things, we go, how can someone do that to children? Well, greed will get you a place to do that to anyone. Greed gets people to a place to sell their own kids. Greed gets people to a place where they sell their own parents. Greed will get us to a place where we can do all sorts of evil and heinous acts. And I think the movie does a good job. Just phenomenal storytelling. Here's what I noticed, by the way. We went to this theater, and the theater was pretty jam-packed. The one we were in was pretty full, which is great. Towards the end of the movie, I looked around, and I think me and my friends might have been the youngest people sitting in that theater, which was a bit shocking to me. And I said, bro, where are the young people? The younger people. And I don't know the reason for that, but it's not that there wasn't a lot of young people at the theaters. Now, we went to a theater where there was this horror movie, I think, that came out, and there was a bunch of younger people, faces painted, dark gothic clothing, and all that stuff. And then Barbie was also out, so there's a lot of people wearing pink and they thinking they're Barbie dolls or whatever like that. We are so infatuated with entertainment as a culture. This is sort of my commentary on this. We think storytelling, movies, for me, movies are obviously a form of storytelling. So it's like reading a book, novel. We think storytelling is for pure entertainment, and I have an issue with that. Like, not that I have issues with being entertained. There's time and a place to be entertained. It's completely fine. But we just want to be entertained. And as we're being entertained, obviously these things are happening. And there's people behind the scenes fighting it, and all that stuff's happening. But I just wish every once in a while people took seriously serious stories. And I wish part of me really wishes that all of those younger people who were watching Barbie and that other movie, whatever it was, would have been in that theater watching this, because I think it would have broken them. I actually think they would have had a hard time trying to reconcile some of this stuff. I want to move into the direction of watching a couple of clips, and one of them is one of them has to do with media and media influence and all that. So, because it's important for us to view kind of what media is about, right? What is the point of, say, cinema? Why watch this in theaters, by the way? I think you should watch it in theaters. I don't think you should wait and watch it in DVD or something like that. Go to the theaters and watch this, guys. If you can't afford it, there are websites on Angel Studios. You can go to Angel Studios. People have probably bought it for you. I was watching the Timcast interview, and one of the guys said that he's going to give $1,000 to buy tickets. Another one, I think, said Tim. I think he said he's going to give $10,000. People have purchased tickets for you if you can't afford it. Go.
Survivors and how they have mastectomy surgery. We get that, right? We're compassionate. But to show a beaver in this way, we know it wasn't about cancer survivor because they'd be wearing a shirt.
Yes.
It was about giving these gender ideology ideas to little kids but then there's subtlety of light in those films. Mm-hmm. So if all they're doing is making movies and entertaining, we're winning. I said this about the Daily Wire, why I'm excited to see them succeed. It needs to happen. Because if the bare minimum of what we do is we end the weird subtlety of darkness and this erosion, and we just course correct and start working towards things that inspire people to be more virtuous or moral, we're winning.
You said the word inspire. Media influence how people think. You know what's the average percent?
Okay, I'll start again. He said media influences you. I was as convinced as I can be about how media influences you when we went to the movies yesterday. There's all these women dressed in pink thinking that they were Barbie dolls. Media influences you. There's one guy that I saw was wearing a jean kind of jacket that was unbuttoned, no shirt underneath, checking himself out as he was walking into the theaters. Essentially, he looked like a Ken doll. All the women and men that I saw wearing all black, faces painted and all that stuff. Media influences you. That's just the reality of it. This is a form of media, what I'm doing. And yes, I'm trying to influence you. It's just that I'll tell you I'm trying to influence you.
And children having meaningful conversations every day in America, and I think now it's in the whole world, 3 to 6 minutes a day. But in front of the media, social media, movies, videos, radio, whatever, more than 10 hours a day. So who is educating their children? It's not parents, neither schools, it's the media. So media.
So he's saying that meaningful conversation between parents and kids is 6 minutes a day, where they're spending about 10 hours consuming all sorts of media. Media is a medium in which you use to impact and influence the people. Just being about entertainment is bad for you. Some people even come on this podcast, conversations we do, and they want to be entertained continuously. Entertainment in and of itself is not bad, but if that's all you're seeking in life, there's a big problem.
I mean, it's good or bad, whatever. It's just a mean. You know, how you use it is what changed everything, right? So art has the power to change people's hearts. Plato said, if I have to choose between art or politics to govern a nation, he said, I would choose art, because art
this is beautiful lines, by the way. Art has the power to change hearts. That's just the reality of it. And this is partly why I would recommend that you guys go watch the movie in theaters. There's a number of things, just even the sound system and stuff like that, it being uninterrupted, people are quiet, you're in it. It's a gigantic screen. It's a form of art. It's a well done storytelling. Good stories that are told well are extremely important. And there's say good humor in it, right? The ability to tell a good story well is extremely important. And I think that's the thing that really stood out with this movie, is that they took a story that had a very limited budget, and then they were able to tell that story well and powerful, and they use music well, and it gets to your heart. Even if this story was not based on true events, it was completely made up, it would have the same impact because it was well told. This gentleman made a movie a number of years ago. I didn't make the connection until I watched this interview. He made a movie a number of years ago called Bella. And I watched that movie a long time ago. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. As far as I know, that's a made-up story. But it's well told. He's a good storyteller. And it pulls on your heartstring. Right? And again, that's the reason why you should go watch it.
Has the power to touch people's hearts and change their minds, therefore how they think, how they live, how they behave. So this is powerful. You know, media influence how people think. And young people, they have this tendency to imitate art. When they go and see the movie, they imitate what they see. So can you imagine if we just lead by example? That's why Tim Ballard in the movie, Jim Caviezel, he speaks very little. Everything is just actions, 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 because action speaks 1,000 words, right? And our hope is that when people see this movie, Sound of Freedom, they will live not only entertained, but they will live inspired, wanting to love more, wanting to forgive more, wanting to become the best version of yourself, wanting to become more like Tim Ballard. You know, this is a true hero. This is not like Superman or Spider-Man. You know what? This is about a true hero, and we all can become heroes. We are called to be heroes, actually. And my goal as a filmmaker is that when people leave the theater, they will love to become ambassadors of freedom. And I hope they will ask the same question I asked myself 8 years ago. What can I do to end this?
So I wanted to play that because you're getting a heart into the person who made the film, or the people who made the film. You get to see their heart. It's like, hey, here's what we want you to get out of it when you watch this movie. When you watch the movie and you leave, we want you to be a better person. We want you to be inspired, right? Not just be entertained. And then he speaks about heroes. Heroes are extremely important. We all have heroes. If you think about it, every single one of us have heroes. There are individuals that we look up to. It is more powerful when these heroes are actual people rather than made-up characters. I can't be Iron Man. It's an impossibility, right? But you can be an actual person that you look up to, who's accomplished whatever it may be in their lives. I'm going to go to another conversation about the media here. This is interesting. I find this very, very odd in regards to the way the media outlets have covered this. And they speak about it here, and it's very interesting to me.
Fund, and I want them to be looking over their shoulders and thinking twice before they put their hand on a kid.
Why do you think it is so many media outlets were attacking the film, insulting it, saying QAnon or paranoid?
Well, first I'll say this.
A little weird, huh?
It's so bizarre because this film was made, produced, written 5-6 years ago before QAnon was even a thing, so it's impossible what they're saying.
By the way, the movie was made, and it was owned by Fox, I think, and then Disney bought it. And then Disney was like, we don't want to release it. We don't. And then they had to go through negotiations and then rebuy the rights to the film. And then they tried to sell it to a bunch of other outlets like Netflix and stuff. And nobody wanted anything to have to do with it until Angel Studios put it out. So it's been a long time since the movie's made. This movie wasn't just made. It was made, I think, 5 years ago or 3 to 5 years ago, something like that, depending on when the recording was or when the production was and the post-production was. So it's been a while, and I think that's what he's touching on. It's hilarious. And then he mentions the actual situations in regards to the media reporting on it and how they covered it then and then how they're covering the movie now. It was very strange.
Why are they saying it? Now, here's my theory. I think I'm right. There's an agenda out there. And there's a conversation to be had, and these outlets don't want to have it. By the way, The Guardian, Rolling Stone, they all praised this operation when it happened. They don't remember. It was 8 years ago, but I have the articles. Look at these guys rescue these kids in Colombia. And now 8 years later, oh, it's QAnon. It didn't even happen, blah, blah. There's a conversation they don't want to have. They don't want to talk about the fact that there's 85,000 unaccompanied minors who came to our border and were released and lost in a country that's the highest consumer for child sex material. That's scary. They don't want to talk about the fact that teachers' unions are providing what we would call pornography to third graders, right? I used to be able to...
This is an interesting point. So he's essentially saying the media outlets are politically influenced in order not to cover this or to cover it negatively. I read a headline, I think yesterday, that said Christian movie There's nothing Christian about this movie. Tim Ballard is a Mormon. Okay? He speaks about God obviously quite a bit, but he's Mormon. A number of people involved in it are obviously religious. Producers, Catholic. So there's religious influence, there's Christian influence and stuff like that here. But it's not a Christian movie. Like, you're not going to go to the movies and walk away with, I want to give my life to Jesus. This is a movie like any other movie that's based on a true story about people doing heroic things. So I would put this movie in regards to the same category as Hotel Rwanda. Okay, Hotel Rwanda based on a true story. Like, you don't, even if the people in that movie, let's just say, I don't know if Hotel Rwanda, if this is true, even if the characters or the people who made it were religious, it'd be really weird for you to say Christian movie about Hotel Rwanda. But for some reason, they're saying, like the headline I read yesterday said, Christian movie. I was like, it's not a Christian movie, man. They're not preaching the gospel. That's just so strange why you would even title your article like that. It seems to me that you're intentionally deceiving people who are like, well, it's a Christian movie. I'm not going to go watch a Christian movie because I'm not a Christian. Why would I go watch a Christian movie? Makes sense. And he's saying part of the reason is because there's conversation we ought to be having. He's going to say something very interesting. He says, years ago, in the early 2000s, he says, I would arrest people for doing whatever it is that is being done in schools now, which is insane.
Arrest people for providing the material to children that teachers are currently giving to kids under the guise of sex education. They don't want to talk about 13-year-old girls being able to consent. And I'm very libertarian when it comes to all these things for an adult, right?
I'll go get the books. Yeah, I think I got a couple of the books you're talking about. We have a book that they have in grade schools.
Oh, I know that one. Yes.
That teaches children how to use adult sex apps.
Yes, I'm very familiar. I just posted on this.
There was a teacher who gave middle schoolers, 10 to 12 years old, a book called This Book is Gay. It's the title of the book. And in it explains how to use Grindr. Why?
On what, page 182?
Yeah. Yes. Now that one we can't show either. That's
you can't show some.
Now, the question here is whether that's like the curriculum or the teachers themselves doing these things. But even if it's the teachers themselves doing these things, they should be arrested and prosecuted. That's just the reality of it. Now, I don't want to focus on that too much because I want to jump into this really cool story they share. And I found this fascinating because Jim Caviezel said yes to the movie. Jim Caviezel said yes to the movie, and then his wife had an issue with it. And then they had to put her heart at ease. And then in putting her heart at ease with a certain decision they make, when he tells the story, you'll hear it. It ends up being that, well, I'll just put it that God used it for good, whatever that may have been. Check this out, guys. Check out this. It's phenomenal when things like this happen.
I really want to thank Jim Caviezel, man.
Oh, brother.
Amazing.
We need to talk about him for a second because I mean, he deserved that.
You said earlier he didn't have a lot of lines, and I noticed that, and it was his eyes, man. You can see his brain. The eyes are connected to the brain, and you see it. Like, I don't know. Did you spend a lot of time with him?
Yeah.
So I don't think you can watch the movie without seeing that. I don't know how Tim, the actual Tim, is still sane, considering that he had to consume large amounts of these things, videos, like 30-minute videos of children being molested. Like, he had to actually watch these things and write reports. And one of the more moving parts of the movie for me was a scene in which he's watching one of these things. It doesn't show him actually watching it. It's PG-13, by the way. But he's watching this on the computer screen, and then it shows that he's writing a report, like, here's what's happening, so that others wouldn't watch it, right? Like, so they would be able to read it. And I immediately thought to myself, I was like, bro, like, I would lose my mind if that was my job, if I had to sit there and watch that, I'd lose my mind. But we'll move on with this. Jim Caviezel does a really good job, and they're very right. Like, they focus in on his eyes a lot, and it's just a lot of pain and sorrow there, and so it's very moving.
We're super good friends, and he spent time with me, and Alejandro said something in the beginning. He says, whoever plays this role has to say way more with his eyes than he does with his mouth. That was before Jim even agreed, and that's exactly what Caviezel pulls off.
That was his idea. This crazy Tim Ballard, because I was thinking about someone else, someone like looks like him, younger and everything. And when I asked him, brother, 20 people passed, so who do you want to play you? And he looked at me and he said, Jesus Christ, brother, come on, I'm not kidding.
He's too expensive.
He's too expensive. No, I'm talking about the guy who played Jesus Christ in The Passion of Christ of Mel Gibson. Oh man, I thought for a second you went crazy. And do you know him? Yeah, I know him. But why him? Because he has the, he's brave. He's a godly man, and I know he's going to be an actor who is not going to be coming here, play the role, go to the premiere, and then next movie. He will stay with us until the end, right? So I text him. I said, brother, I have something for you. When can I see you? In 2 hours, in this coffee. So Alejandro and I went to meet with him. We pitched the story to him, and he starts crying. He said, brother, this is too personal to me. And he shared a very personal story. And I was like, wow, okay, this is your story, brother. This is it. So the next day he calls me and he tells me, I have a good news and a challenge. What is the good news? I'm in. That's it. Tell Tim Ballard, tell Alejandro that I'm in. What is the bad news? What is the challenge? Well, my wife saw Narcos Colombia on Netflix, and she's afraid for me to go to Colombia to film this movie. Oh man, I hated that because
So the movie's filmed in Colombia. A good amount of it is filmed there. But so she watched the Netflix show and she's like, I don't know if I want my husband there. And look what they do.
Again, media influence how people think. Latinos, we have been stereotyped in a very negative way since the 40s until today. And then a lot of people here in this country, they think Latinos, we are a threat to the democracy of this country because they think that we are what they see in film or television, all the negative stereotypes. So, and this TV series, they do a lot of damage. And here you have this Jim Caviezel's wife saying he's not going to Colombia. I said, well, hold on a second. Let me just call Tim Ballard. I'll call you right back. Tim, I have a good news and a bad news, brother. Good news, Jim Caviezel is in. Bad news, his wife saw Narcos Colombia on Netflix and she doesn't want him to go there. What can we do? And he's thinking and thinking. And he said, tell them if 30 ex-Navy SEALs will be enough to protect him. I called him. I passed it.
Did you catch that? Tell them if 30 ex-Navy SEALs would be enough to protect him. Whether his wife, Jim's wife, would be okay with 30 ex-Navy SEALs accompanying him to Colombia. Look what happens.
Message. Green light. We're in Colombia filming, right? But look what happened. 30 of these guys were on set. A week later, half of them are not on set anymore.
So they're all there, and then 15 of them, they're not on the set anymore.
And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to say anything. As a producer, I know who's on set. We have 200 people, extras, actors, whatever, And I noticed that half of them were not there. So 1 month and a half later, I'm reading this local newspaper from Colombia that it says that the federal police arrested some traffickers and rescued more than 200 children in Cartagena, Colombia, who were kidnapped for sexual exploitation, and more details like in the movie. Very similar story to the movie. So I run to see Tim Ballard and I said, brother, look, like in the movie. And he smiled and he said, that was us. What? That was us. Half of the guys who were not on set, they were walking on the Cartagena streets.
This is nuts. Okay, so these guys are on the set. 15 of them go and they're walking around on some street like they're on their off time. And then this happens.
Saturday, and these people came and approached them. Hey, amigo, gringo, you want senoritas, young ladies, how many you want? They thought they were tourists looking for action, right?
Wow.
Next thing you know, they didn't know that these guys were experts on rescue children, right? So they say, well, can I call you tomorrow because there's more Americans coming and we need more girls. Do you have really young girls? Brother, we have everything you need. Okay, we have chickens. Chickens means very little boys and girls, right? So anyway, so they rescued these children. They started this undercover operation with the help of the police, Colombia police. So I'm thinking
while you're filming the movie?
Yes. Well, I mean, the second week, brother, of filming, half of these guys were rescuing 200 children. And I'm thinking, wait a second. Thank God for Jim Caviezel's wife who said no in the beginning. Because of that no, he was inspired, Tim Ballard, to bring 30 ex-Navy SEALs. And because of those 30 ex-Navy SEALs, half of them rescued 200 children before the film was even finished.
Sound of Freedom 2.
Okay, so I love that he says that, by the way. He said Sound of Freedom 2. It's like a movie within a movie, right? It's a movie about making a movie that results into the saving of these kids. That would make a good movie. But I love kind of his reasoning there. And if you want to think biblically about this, right, that God works out all things for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purposes. But even just God's, say, planning of things. Jim Caviezel's wife says, no, I don't feel safe. As a result, they got to take these guys. These guys on Saturday are walking when they're not filming. They're just strolling down the street, and some dudes come up to them and like, "Hey, you want some girls?" And these guys obviously start thinking, they're like, "Hey, we're here for the movie, but let's see what happens." They start fishing, and then they go, "Hey, yeah, we do have little kids," and then they end up talking to the police, setting up a sting operation, rescuing 200 kids. And what he goes on to say, the producer for the film, he says, if the movie, he said later on in the interview, he says, if an earthquake happened or a hurricane happened or something like that, and the movie got destroyed, like we never released this movie, just that would have been worth it. Just the fact that these guys were there and they worked on this sting operation and ended up breaking, because of the movie, they ended up rescuing these 200 kids. He said it would have been well worth it. That would have been enough for me. And I think that's just phenomenal, right? It's always cool hearing stories like that. So, and they go on to say, even Tim, the guy who's doing the podcast, says, look, man, I'm not religious any specific way or something like that. But when I see things like this happening, I kind of sit there and go, like, what are the chances? What are the chances of saying, no, these people going, these are the right sort of people, and then this happening and that happening, and then that happening, right? So phenomenal, especially on a movie like that. Overall, guys, I would say go watch it. If you have an opportunity, go watch it. If you can't afford it, they're offering you free tickets to take your friends, to take your family. Go to Angel Studios website, and then if you just Google free tickets, Angel Studios, Sound of Freedom, or free tickets to Sound of Freedom, you're going to come across that. And if you want to buy tickets for other people, you can still do that. I like the film, man. I'd watch it again. I thought I was going to be a lot more emotional. That I thought maybe like visually it would have been tougher for me to handle. But one of the masterful ways that they did the storytelling is they left a number of things up to your imagination. They didn't show anything. There's nothing graphic. They suggested. And that suggestion, that power of suggestion and imagination being perked is enough. Is enough to see, is enough for you to get touched, is enough for you to be invested into the movie. And that's just wonderful. It really is. So, in regards to the production, like if you're expecting like this crazy blockbuster Hollywood film that has millions and millions of dollars back in it, you're not going to see that, right? It's not the sort of money that's backed by some of these other movies like that have recently come out. Indiana Jones, Barbie, Mission Impossible. These movies have a lot behind them. But the cool thing is that people have gone and seen it. They're posting about it. People are doing reviews about it like the way I am. And I again, yesterday even, I wasn't sure about doing a review, but after I watched the movie and I was like, you know what? Like, I would like to spread this to other people who haven't seen it and encourage them to go and watch it. If you're thinking about taking kids to watch it, I would just say, and they say this in this interview, if they're 13 and over, I think, yeah, take the kids. But don't take kids younger than that. I don't think they might be ready for... They're going to ask you a lot of questions you might feel very uncomfortable with answering or just don't want to answer it. So that's what my recommendation would be. I wouldn't allow my kids to watch this. But if they're a bit older, 14, 15 years old, it makes sense. To again, you know your kids best and whether they